To secure A1 in biology this year, WAEC 2026, you need to focus on these topics. So if you can read them very well and you master them very well, your A1 will be easily secured. The first one is under Organization of Life and Cell Biology. So under this, you have to read cell organ, level of organizations. Under this, you have to understand the transition from cells to tissues, from tissues to organs, and from organs to system. Make sure you read them very well. Then cell division, where you have master the stages of mitosis, that is growth, and meiosis. So you have to read them very well. Then under plant and animal nutrition, you have to read photosynthesis. Under it, focus on the light and dark reaction and the importance of magnesium and iron in plants. Then mammalian digestion is another thing. You have to memorize the enzymes. You are talking about pepsin and others. You have to read them very well. Then transport system in human. Make sure you read them very well. Then after that, make sure you study everything under internal homeostasis, where you have regulating the body. So under this, you have the kidney. You have to understand ultrafiltration and selective reabsorption. This is coming under the kidney. Then liver functions. You have to focus on deamination, where you have bile production and blood sugar regulation. Read them very well. Then hormonal control, where you have to know the effect of insulin, adrenaline, and thyroxine. You have to study them very well. Then ecology and environmental biology. This section is usually easier to score points in if you use the correct terminology. There are terminologies you have to study very well. Now under this, you have energy flow. Under this energy flow, you have food chain, you have food webs, and the pyramids of energy. Then after that, you have nutrient circles, where you have the nitrogen circle. That one is a common exam favorite. You should know that. Then ecological adaptation. Under this, you have how desert plants and hydrophytes, where you have water plants survive. You have to read them very well. Then under genetic and evolution, you have to study Mendelian laws. Under this, you have practical drawing genetic crosses. You have to study that one very well. Then you have variation. Under this, you have to distinguish between continuous, where you have ice, and the continuous, where you have blood group variation. Then under evolution, you need to understand the evidence for evolution and Darwin's theory of natural selection. Then the last part, which is practical, you have this as paper 3. So you cannot study for this but just reading. You must practice. Under this, you need practical. So you have biological drawing. So where you have to use your HB pencil. Ensure lines are not feathered. Let your lines be cleared. And labels are horizontal. You should know that very well. So under this, you have food test. So be ready to describe the procedure for testing for glucose, starch, and protein. So in whatever is given to you. Then classification of specimens. You should be able to identify features like chitinous, exoskeleton for insect or succulent stems for certain plants. So if you can focus on this, your A1 is secured. Make sure you prepare very well. And you prepare very well, the exam will be very easy for you. I wish you best of luck. Thank you.